Well, hey there, and welcome to Wedding Planning Simplified. I am Amy, and I'm here today with Jacqueline.
Hello.
And we are from Unmistakably You, a boutique wedding coordinating. Oh my gosh, I can't speak English. Boutique wedding coordination company
I was
in
gonna say you
London,
didn't make it
Ontario.
easy on yourself. There's lots of syllables there.
I know. I should have just called it like Weddings with Amy or something. Anyway, welcome. If you are joining us for the first time today, thank you. If you are a longtime viewer, thank you as well. We are so grateful to you for being here and giving us something to do every Sunday afternoon.
Definitely.
So, we are here today to talk about the importance of gratitude and saying thank you to your guests and just showing your appreciation to them for the sacrifices that they have made, whether it's time sacrifices or financial sacrifices to actually attend your wedding.
Definitely. And I think heading out of a COVID, out of a pandemic, out of just the real world of today where the typical Monday 9 to 5 isn't around so much anymore, recognizing that people's time is often just as valuable as their gift, if not more.
Absolutely. I'm just trying to multitask and failing miserably. There we go. I at the risk of sounding like an old lady, I think I'm going to get on my old lady soapbox here for just a second. The
Get up
children
there.
of today. Uh, I feel like as our parents and our grandparents maybe get farther removed from some of the true hardships of the past. You think about wars and the Great Depression and things like that. I think it's really easy for the children and the youth of today to get more and more entitled and to just kind of feel like things should be handed to them on a silver platter and they are deserving of the very best. And absolutely, that's true. I mean, we want everybody to have an easy life, absolutely. But I think that kind of has resulted in maybe a decline in the way that we as a society express our gratitude. And as an old lady, that makes me sad. I mean, I was always brought up that you don't walk up to a house on Halloween and stick out your hand and go trick or treat. My mom always taught me that you walk up to a house and you say, "Hi, happy Halloween." And then they give you candy and you say thank you. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with gratitude in general. And I don't know that I see a lot of pure, honest gratitude on a daily basis. I'm hopeful that is something that's changing. I know that a lot of mindfulness experts and self help gurus are talking about the practice of gratitude journaling because figuring out what you're grateful for on a daily basis is so important in just your mental health and being appreciative and positive about what you have in your life. And so I think what we're chatting about today kind of ties into all of that. And I'm going to step down off my soapbox right now and just say that, I saw a thread in a Facebook group last week or a week 2 weeks ago, that was from someone who said, I didn't get a gift from so and so at my wedding. Do I still have to send them a thank you card? And I think that yes, absolutely you do, because it's important to be mindful of, as Jacqueline mentioned, the sacrifices that they've made to be at your wedding. And I think that it shouldn't necessarily be a reflection, your gratitude shouldn't be a reflection of the value of their gift. And your expectation of a gift shouldn't be reflective of how much you've spent on their attendance at your wedding. There's this sort of old fashioned belief that you should give a gift at a wedding that's reflective of how much the couple has spent on your presence at the wedding. And ultimately, the people who love you and who came to your wedding would have come to your wedding if you spent $300 a person at some boutique hotel in the big city, or if you had a potluck wedding in jeans in your backyard. So I think that it's important to be grateful and thankful and to express that gratitude to the guests who did attend your wedding, regardless of the monetary value of the gift that they bring.
Absolutely. And I think so
Off the
quickly,
soapbox.
stepping onto my high horse of the younger generation, like we definitely take connection for granted. We've grown up in this beautiful world of social media where sending a Facebook message is as easy as picking up the phone and calling somebody. But sometimes that face-to-face connection and having those in-person conversations, it's important to take time to reflect back on those long after your wedding day, because Amy is the first to say this. And I repeat it often, but you should be planning your marriage, not your wedding. And if all you're focused on is their monetary value or their presence on your wedding day, and you're not thinking about the aftermath of that relationship after your wedding, well, it kind of defeats the purpose of having them there to stand and support you if you're not going to thank them for that support.
Absolutely. So, Jacqueline, who should get a thank you card after the wedding?
Well, this has been a hot topic, especially in vendor communities. I think after the year we've had, we might be a little biased, but I would be the first to admit that your vendors should get an extra little thank you. And I know that sometimes couples will give that in the form of a tip envelope, but oftentimes we get a little bit of an extra heart flutter seeing your photos from your wedding with a lovely little thank you scribble on the back, just saying, "You made my day possible," or "Thank you so much for helping us get there," wherever we were in their planning process, or if you're a photographer, videographer, officiant. Sometimes just having that actual keepsake that's not monetary value means more. I know my office wall is decorated with thank you cards, and maybe it's just because it's tacky to put up tips, but I like to think that it's because the thank you cards mean a lot more than whatever else could be given. I think in
Absolutely.
addition to that, of course, the obvious goes to anybody that's attended your wedding. This kind of goes without saying, but obviously every gift you receive, you want to kind of be making a note of who gave that gift. So that way you are able to specify that. But Amy will get into her beautiful thank you equation later. You might want to give a special thank you card, whether it's a little bit of a longer card or just a different style of card for your wedding party, because yes, they've supported you leading up to your wedding, but who are the first people you're going to call when you have your first fight? As a married couple, chances are it's going to be those friends. And if it's not those friends, it's going to be your family. So don't forget to send your family a special thank you card as well, because ultimately, although it might not have been monetary support, they have been fielding all of your wedding questions for months and months, and in some cases, years and years. So a little thank you here and there to those people is always recommended.
Absolutely. I think that, I mean, nobody gets to where they are in a vacuum, and showing appreciation for your closest friends and your family on a daily basis is important, but particularly following your wedding as well. So, why is it important, Jacqueline, to send thank you cards? You mentioned already it's kind of the first communication you've had as a couple. We've talked about how it shows that you respect your guests' time. What are some other reasons you might think of to send cards in the first place?
In a completely biased way, from someone that's not obsessed with wedding photography at all, it is a perfect excuse to flaunt your amazing wedding photos that you've, chances are, spent a fair amount of money on, but it also gives your guests a sneak peek into what your day is going to look like if you haven't had the opportunity to share your gallery with those people. It also just shows that you understand that they did make a sacrifice for that day, whether it be monetary value. And I know we've been saying sacrifice as if it takes someone twisting your arm to go to a wedding. I don't mean that your wedding was the ultimate sacrifice these people made, but especially coming out of where we've been, appreciating people's time goes a long way. And showing gratitude, like Amy said, is just really good karma to head forward into your marriage, I think.
Absolutely. And to go back to the photo thing, it's also an opportunity during your wedding photography, if you've pre-planned a little bit, to bring along a banner or a sign or something that says thank you on it, so that you can take that picture that you intend later on to put on your thank you card, which is super cute, I always think. And I've mentioned in the download that you're going to have access to that if you are waiting on thank you cards with your photos to be printed, there's always a little bit of a turnaround time for the photographer to edit the photos and to print the actual cards themselves. So if you're waiting for those cards to come back, you can certainly start drafting what you're going to say in your thank you cards in a separate document, and then you can have those words ready to go when they're fresh in your mind for when you do get those thank you cards back with the photos on them.
Now, Amy, sorry to interrupt you, but where's a good program that couples could either be drafting potential thank you cards or just coming up with good language for a thank you card?
You know what? I'm just a fan of a good old fashioned Word doc or a Google Doc. I mean, I've given in the download, I've given some suggested verbiage that you could use. We've got a little equation that you can put together different sentences to make a personal and gracious thank you card. But I think that as ideas come to you, if you're waiting on those cards to be printed, you could certainly just jot them down by hand if you're one of those old-fashioned, notepad people, or you could certainly just open a Google Doc or something like that to jot down your ideas. And I think in terms of programs as well, if you are creating your own thank you cards, you can jot down some of those words too in the program where you're making your cards. If you're sending a generic card, you could still put a meaningful salutation or thought on the front of it. So some of those programs that you might make your own cards are, of course, our friend Canva. Vistaprint is very popular. Etsy, there are tons of very talented artists on Etsy who will design cards for you. Minted is another place where you can customize your own cards. Or, of course, we're always a huge fan of supporting our local artisans. So the Paper Bride, shout out to them. There's primarily paper here in London, invited by Danny here in London. We've actually designed a thank you card here and there. So thinking about, while the wedding is fresh in your mind, designing those cards as well as what you're going to write in them eventually is important, I think. I'm just going to pause for a second here. Jillian's got a question. Would you do thank you cards for immediate family members if you did something more at the wedding, like a thank you gift for specific members, mother the bride, mother the groom? I think a post-wedding note certainly goes a long way as well. It doesn't have to be extensive, but following the wedding, just a thank you for the support on the day. Thank you for helping clean up at the end of the night. Thank you for driving us to our hotel at the end of the evening. Things like that certainly should be acknowledged as well. Presumably, you've acknowledged your wedding party and your families in your speech. We did do a live about that a few weeks ago, and there's a speech etiquette cheat sheet that if you need it, shoot us a comment and we can send it to you. It's also posted in the group. But I think that, as I say, daily gratitude is something that I think goes a long way to your own mental well-being as well as those special people in your life. So acknowledging the little things after the wedding, I think, is important also.
Yeah, and not only just mentioning those little things, but trying your best. And it's really hard on the wedding day, but to key into those specific moments where those people really supported you or where you were able to have a really great personal connection with them, because likely you were probably their main focus their entire day, but they know as guests that they necessarily weren't your main focus the whole day. So it is nice when you can go back on those specific moments and say, hey, I remember it. I really appreciated it. It was amazing. It's also kind of nice to give yourself a refresher depending on how late your night went.
Absolutely. Now, what kind of timeline are we looking at for sending out thank you cards?
Well, you know me, I like to be overly prepared. So I always say earlier rather than later. A lot of the time, especially if we're being honest, we are heading into a wedding boom. So if you are part of the 2022 year, expect the fact that a lot of your guests will have a lot of weddings to attend, which means that they're going to be getting a lot of postage. So the sooner you're able to share your gratitude, the sooner they're going to be able to reflect back on your day and be able to remember those key specific moments that happened with you, which I always like doing sooner rather than later. But ultimately, it comes down to being how organized you really are. So if you are nice and organized, opening those gifts, recording who's given you those gifts, you can give a little bit more flexibility. So anywhere between right after you've been married to a year after, but I always recommend at least try to get them started within the 3-month range.
Absolutely. I think if you were reading an advice column by Ann Landers or something, technically you have up to a year. But you all know that these days, you're not just getting married. Most of our couples are getting married and building a house or moving or starting their families immediately or adopting a puppy or whatever it is. Life gets busy. And I think the longer you put it off, the easier it is to forget about it entirely. So while you might technically have up to a year, we would advise you to try and get them done within the first 3 to 4 months, if possible. You can even start sending thank you cards before the wedding in the event that people have given you gifts before the wedding. That's something that sometimes happens, if a couple is getting you something off of your registry. Sometimes it can be delivered directly to your house, and it takes that off of the plate of the couple attending the wedding. They don't have to schlep in a big box of, stoneware plates or something like that. So if gifts are delivered before the wedding, you certainly can start sending thank you cards before the wedding if you're not doing customized photo thank you cards. But I think you need to just be mindful of scheduling the time, regardless of when you send them out. Schedule some time, put it in your calendar, sit down and write 10 of them at a time. And make sure that if you are the partner who's doing the writing, the other partner is also going to come in and sign them at the very least. I always think that it's really important to handwrite your thank you cards because, again, this is the old-fashioned Amy speaking, but the fact that you've taken that time to handwrite, even if your handwriting is atrocious, handwrite a card, it shows that you care, and then get your partner to sign it in their own handwriting as well. It's just a little, maybe subliminal indication to your guests that both of you are gracious and appreciative of the gift that you were given. I think that scheduling that into your calendar is really, really important.
Definitely. And sorry to interrupt you, but if anybody is feeling a little insecure about their chicken scratch, or if they have a partner that is insecure about their chicken scratch, these are your friends, these are your family, these are the people that are here to support you. Chances are they've received some horribly written cards from you in the past. This won't be the first, this won't be the last. Don't let that be a deterrent as to why we go back and go to our generational cheapskate of doing everything online. It is really important to do those handwritten letters. It's not a generational thing, Amy. I think it as well.
Okay. Well, I do usually feel like an old lady when I talk about stuff like this, but I think that handwritten card really does go a long way. And I don't know about you, but when I go to my mailbox, a lot of what I get is bills and junk mail. And so if something comes in that's actually handwritten and personalized to me, it's just a special little bright spot in the day because it's not just somebody else looking for money or looking for my vote or looking for, whatever it is.
Exactly.
So let's talk for a little bit about what to write in your thank you cards. We have created a handy dandy little cheat sheet for you. It's got a formula. As much as I hate math, it does have do this, then do this, then do this. Add these all together, and it will equal a sincere thank you card. But please do be mindful of the fact that you want it to sound like it's coming from you. So use your voice, use your language, and personalize it to suit yourself and your position in life. But I have given you on the download different parts to put together with some sample verbiage and a couple of little helpful tips. So we are going to post that as a PDF in the comments when we're done here. So take a look for that, download it, and feel free to use the equation to write your own gracious personal thank you cards. So what I would suggest is starting out with some kind of a salutation, dear so-and-so, or oh my gosh, so-and-so, write it in your own voice, be as enthusiastic and as effusive as you would be in person, but please make sure that you are addressing it to who gave you the gift. So typically you'll get a card that says, love, Aunt Jean and Uncle Joe. Address your thank you card to Aunt Jean and Uncle Joe. If Aunt Jean and Uncle Joe's kids gave you a separate gift with a separate card, then include a separate thank you card for them. So being mindful of not trying to, pack things together and lighten your load. Oh, if I can just send it to all my cousins and my aunt and uncle. No, I mean, especially if they live in a different household or if they've given you a separate card, you need to give them a separate thank you card as well. So start with your salutation, and then you're going to give some sincere and specific appreciation. And that can be something like, we are so thankful that you were able to celebrate with us on our wedding day. Some kind of appreciation for the time that they were able to spend with you or the sacrifice that they made to be able to attend your wedding. It's not like everybody these days has a standard Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. They may have had to take an unpaid Saturday off of work to attend your wedding. So acknowledging that, I think, goes a long way. The next thing you're going to do is acknowledge their specific gift. So if they gave you a tangible thing, you're going to write down, thank you so much for the casserole dish, or thank you so much for the Dyson vacuum, whatever it is. Thank you for the specific gift. If they've given you a monetary gift, you're going to say something like, thank you for your contribution to our new fridge or our honeymoon. So you don't have to write thank you for the $395.65 that you put towards our honeymoon, but say something specific as to what you're using that money for, so that they don't think you're just going to go out and, waste it on, I don't know, hookers and blow or whatever. So specific use of the money. And then you're going to conclude that thought with something like, we can't wait to use the casserole dish to make our first beef stew together, or something like that. Or, we'll be sure to raise a glass and toast you when we're on our honeymoon. Or, some kind of indication of how you will use the gift, or that you will think of them when you're using the gift. Then you're going to have some kind of a closing. So I would suggest that you have some kind of reiteration of your appreciation for their attendance, and then a future plans kind of a comment. So something like, it was so special that we got to share a drink with you at our reception, and we can't wait to invite you to our new house for dinner soon. Something like that indicates the continuation of the relationship in the future. So you're going to have your salutation, plus your indication of appreciation for their attendance, plus a specific mention of their gift and how you'll use it, and then an indication of the future goals of your relationship with the guest, and then a closing. Signatures by both partners. And there's more about this in the download, so do look for that. We'll post it immediately after we're done here.
Now, Amy, I had a question. In the day and age of lovely plus ones, what happens in the case where you're well aware that chances are the guest you invited is the one that really contributed to the gift and their plus one was just there for the ride? Do you include them in the thank you card, or would you address just the person that gave the gift?
I think if they're coming to the wedding as a couple, you would certainly show your appreciation for both of their contributions. I would take my lead from who signed the card. I mean, if your cousin brought a plus one that he met the week before at a bar and that person is already out of the picture, then by all means, don't put that person's name on it. But if it's a long-term relationship, if the plus one is likely to stick around for a while, I would still include their name on the thank you card, even if you know in your heart of hearts that they had very little to do with the gift. But ultimately, go with closeness of relationship and what their card to you says, who signed it. So, Jacqueline, any further thoughts on the importance of sending out thank you cards?
I think just recognizing that although a thank you card in the real scheme of a wedding task might seem mundane and really small, but just recognize that it has a really large impact on everyone that receives it, whether it's the venue, all of your vendors, a wedding guest. It does make the difference. And I am the first to not love wasting money. And I'm also the first to not love wasting paper. But I think thank you cards are one of the only stationary items that are less likely to end up in the recycling bin at the end of the day.
It's very true. Very true. Now, Jillian has another question. Would you also send a thank you to guests who were invited and RSVP'd no, or only if they sent a card or a gift? Also thinking that you're going to have e-guests. Yeah. And so this is something that's tricky in the era of virtual weddings. Absolutely. I think ultimately your handwritten thank you cards should go to the guests who physically attended your wedding or who gave you a physical or monetary gift. So certainly if a guest who's attending virtually sends you a gift, then absolutely yes. I think it's a little bit harder, as Jillian's mentioning here, when you don't know for sure who actually sat down and watched the live stream. So in that case, I would suggest maybe sending out a a generic thank you, and it can be an email or however you've communicated with your virtual guests. Just send out a generic thank you so much. It meant the world to us to know that you were sending your love virtually and that you took the time to share our special day, even though you couldn't be there personally. I do think that showing appreciation is never going to be a bad thing. It's never going to be a mistake. It's never going awry. So even if you can't address it to a specific person that you know for sure attended, if you've emailed your guests a Zoom link or a YouTube link or however you've virtually broadcast your day, I think just send out after the wedding a generic thank you via that same channel, just to say, it meant a lot to us that you were there in spirit, even though you couldn't be there physically. Does that make sense?
Made sense to me, but Jillian, please let us know. Sometimes I tend to
Okay.
mind read for Amy, and then I'm like, wait, that made no sense. We'll make a document.
One of the many reasons I love Jacqueline, because she's inside my head. All right. Well, if you are catching us on the replay and you have questions, as always, don't hesitate to post a comment, send us a DM, or shoot us an email. You can get us Amy at unmistakably.you.com or Jacqueline at unmistakably.you.com. We are very much looking forward next week to talking about your photography list and a little bit about the photos that you might not think you want right now, but that you're probably going to want in the future, as well as from that vendor appreciation side of things. Making sure to get some photos that can show some love to your vendors also. So that is next week's plan. We will look forward to seeing you here on Sunday at 1:00 to talk all about your photography list. Thank you, as always, for joining us. We, speaking of gratitude, are infinitely grateful to you for, just supporting us and giving us things to talk about and always being here to speak with and to share in the beauty and the excitement of your wedding day.
Definitely. Thanks, everybody, for always sharing your Sundays, too.
Absolutely. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Sunday.